Thank you very much. I would like to talk about the stories that we tell as a society and what art can do to change those stories. Within a community, there are certain stories that are dominant and are told more than others. Meanwhile, these other stories often get silenced. I have challenged myself as a theater director and as an artist to bring forth the stories that get silenced. Well, what does it mean for one story to be dominant and another story to be silenced? I'll give you an example from Duke. Walking around campus or being on the bus, here's a conversation that I hear a lot. It goes something like this. How are you? Oh, I'm good. I have a midterm coming up on Thursday. Oh, you have a midterm. Well, I have 2 midterms this week. Oh, well, really, I have 3 papers going on this week. Oh, I have 4 job interviews. I have 5 meetings for my exec board. And so on and so forth. This is a conversation that I hear students having a lot, and it paints a certain portrait of Duke students as always busy and always successful, doing great things. At the same time, it says that we're always good, and we're always okay doing these things. When in reality, we can't spend all our time being successful, and no, we're not always okay and always good. For the past 2 years, I worked on Me Too monologues here at Duke. This theater production accepts anonymous submissions from Duke students about identity. These anonymous submissions are then given to actors who perform them in one of the biggest theatrical events on campus. Under the veil of anonymity, students bring forth stories that they could otherwise only tell in the most intimate setting of a late-night dorm room conversation. But here we bring them center stage, and we hear incredible stories. Stories about facing the death of a parent, stories about racial discrimination, stories about sexual assault, stories about going into banking or finance and not knowing why. These stories reveal a different picture of Duke, one that's more vulnerable, one that is more open to revealing weakness. And so far, Me Too has been a huge success. This year, we reached 1,900 students, almost a third of the undergraduate student body. Moreover, each year after Me Too, we hear from the Women's Center at Duke and our Center for Counseling and Psychological Services that more people are coming in to talk and to tell their stories. Seeing people bring forth their silenced narratives on stage, the audience is more willing to bring forth their silenced narratives in real life. And the idea that theater can do that is mind-blowing. So there's a dominant narrative and a silenced narrative here at Duke. Does such a thing exist on a societal level? I would argue that yes, that it is true. A lot of artists talk about their work as referring to the human condition, or talking about what it means to be human. Moreover, they claim that their stories are universal and refer to all of humanity. But really, do the arts represent all of humanity? This chart shows the racial breakdown of Actors' Equity, the National Union of Stage Actors in America. 84% of the actors employed last year with Actors' Equity were white. This tells you a little bit something about the characters that we present on our stages, and who, if you're going to the theater, you're going to see in front of you. This is the gender breakdown of playwrights whose works have been on Broadway in most recent years. 12% female, 88% male. Nationally, this record is closer to 20% female, 80% male, and that is staggering. Moreover, the studies I looked at didn't even account for people who don't conform to a gender binary and their work as playwrights. In terms of the relationships we see on stage, they are overwhelmingly heterosexual. On a personal note, as a queer man growing up, seeing on stage before me only examples of heterosexual love made me think that this was the only type of valid love out there. Society silenced the narratives of people like me, and thus it taught me to silence my own narrative. Only once I was able to shake off this story that every instance of love is heterosexual was I able to free my own story and my own identity. One can see based on these demographics of whose stories get told on stage that it reflects in a lot of ways the inequalities present in our society based on race, based on gender, based on sexual orientation. I haven't even talked about socioeconomic status or ability, disability, and the other variety of factors that may appear or not appear on stage. When we only show some people's stories, we are perpetuating societal inequality. Moreover, when we show some people's stories and we present them as universal or as the human condition, we're silencing the diversity within the human condition and refusing to recognize the specificity of individual experiences. As an artist, I want to challenge our perceptions about equality and inequality, and I want to work to break systems of privilege and oppression. So, how does one do this? The first matter is about finding good plays, commissioning good plays, writing good plays, such that we can tell stories that aren't usually being heard. Apart from that, one can also pursue community-based documentary theater. This is the type of theater that Me Too monologues is. Theater that works with communities, gathers their stories, and then puts these stories on stage. In high school, I had the blessing of working on a show called The Laramie Project, which documented the experience of residents of Laramie, Wyoming, in the wake of a hate crime against a gay man in their community. This theater piece brought up stories that weren't being told by the news media in their reporting of the hate crime. Moreover, being on stage and playing a real person, speaking their real words with a real voice was phenomenal, and I would love to work on more projects like that. Recently, just this month, there was a production called I Too Am Harvard at Harvard University. This production brought forth stories of Black students at Harvard, often about discrimination or not feeling like their voices were being heard. I Too Am Harvard was a springboard and a launch pad for them to vocalize their stories and bring them into the general narrative of Harvard. I'm speaking out for what had been previously silenced narratives. Moreover, here in Durham, there was a recent production called The Best of Enemies, which documented Durham's own civil rights history and raised questions about current-day race relations, starting conversations that otherwise might not have happened. Another type of theater that can bring forth silenced narratives is theater of the oppressed. This was pioneered by Brazilian theater director Augusto Boal, and is really about engaging with audiences. What it will do is it will tell a story such as that of a woman facing domestic abuse or partner violence. It'll run through the story once, and then it'll go back right to the beginning, and this time anybody in the audience can raise their hand and yell stop and jump in on stage for the protagonist, trying to act out different solutions and imagining different scenarios. It is a theatrical laboratory for thinking about new ways to end societal oppression. And what I love is that it doesn't just tell a story to the audience, it accepts the audience's stories as part of the theatrical event. Theater of the oppressed is being used all around the world. A London-based group called Cardboard Citizens is using it with the homeless. Another group is using it in Israel-Palestine for efforts at peace building and creating peace. Here at Duke, I last year worked on a Theater of the Oppressed project on environmental justice. Things are going on all around the world, and it's so exciting. One can also just create new works of theater with different communities around us. Right now, I've been working with refugee youth in the Durham area who have been forced to leave their home countries and who have resettled here in Durham. These are students who are middle school age and high school age and might not be the most eager to speak up in class, not only because of language barriers, but for other reasons as well. With theater, I can be able to use it as a tool to teach English, and also to strengthen their confidence with public speaking and with speaking in front of a group, so that in the future, they'll be able to leverage their voices further. Right now, we're working on scenes, and next month, we'll be putting on a short production, compiling all of them together. I want to use art to challenge the traditional narratives that we often hear and to challenge questions of societal oppression. I challenge all the artists out there to do the same and think about how art can also do this. I challenge the viewers of art and consumers of art out there to think about what stories you are hearing and what stories you are not hearing. It can mean so much for a person to tell their story and to have it listened to. It's meant a lot to me today to be able to tell my story to you all, and thank you so much for listening.